Welcome to Women of Wicomico, and yes, that means wow. My name is Catherine Jones, and I'll be your host today. The purpose of this program is to inform and inspire women from all walks of life, and we take a deeper look into their perspectives on being a resident of Wicomico County and being a woman of Wicomico County. I'm very excited today. Our guest is Meredith Mears. Meredith is a community, economic, and commercial real estate development broker, and she's definitely has gone over and broken a lot of barriers when it comes to being a female in this line of profession. Welcome, Mary.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
So Mary, she's just she's going to be providing us with so much information, and she's a wealth of resources when it comes to making a difference in Wicomico County and being a strong leader. And so I for your biography, I'm literally going to have to read parts of this, so bear with me, our viewers. She's just so amazing. I can't miss not one piece of this. Meredith Mears is widely known as a commercial and estate advisor and economic development consultant, specializing in industrial, medical, and retail properties, as well as land development. For over 20 years, Mears has worked with a client base that includes local and statewide governments, commercial property owners and investors, and privately operating companies across the globe, not just Wicomico County, across the globe, solidifying her position as a heavily experienced, trusted, and reputable resource. Mears remains very active in her community, and I will testify to that. She has served in a multitude of community leadership roles as regent for the University System of Maryland, board member of Leadership Maryland, board member of the Maryland Economic Development Association, and board member of Maryland Capital Enterprises, among others. In 2020, I'm sure we're not going to be surprised over this one. In 2020, she was named a top 100 woman in the state of Maryland by the Daily Record for her vast contributions in business, community, and mentoring. Mears is a graduate of Salisbury University, yay, and lives in Salisbury, Maryland with her family. So welcome, Mary. Thank you so much for joining us. And again, I didn't want to miss not one piece of your biography because you just have contributed so much. It sounds like not just to the city of Salisbury, Wicomico County, but to the nation as a whole. So welcome.
Thank you.
And so I always like to get to know those that I'm interviewing on a different level. So we know you're an accomplished professional in a field that so few women work in. Who else? What else would our viewers like to know about Mary?
Oh gosh. Well, I can tell you a little bit more about me, the person. So I grew up on the eastern shore of Virginia, just about an hour south of Salisbury. In a very, very rural area. And growing up, I knew that I loved my home, but there weren't a lot of job opportunities available to me for things that I felt like I wanted to do when I grew up. And I was always inclined to work in business, always loved being around people. And coming to Salisbury, going to Salisbury University really helped open my eyes to some of the work in the community that was going on at the time, and then even beyond that. And I was very, very fortunate to meet and become involved professionally with some great mentors here at Salisbury University who really took me by the hand and introduced me to people and showed me different things. And from there, I began working in community development and workforce development, economic development, and then eventually real estate development, which is, I think, where my career is going to settle. It has been a tremendous journey to get where I am, and I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to be in this community.
Wow. Okay, so I'm going to have to ask this question. I know it's off script. I apologize for this, but being from the eastern shore of Virginia, do you like to fish?
Oh, gosh. I love to fish. I love to go on boats. I grew up boating and fishing in the summertime. That's really what we had to do in the summer. There's not a lot of things to do where I'm from, and so you have to find them. And growing up, I was told, you really need to be really thankful for where you're growing up. There's really no other place in the world like this. And you take it for granted. And looking back and thinking back on, I didn't have a lot growing up, but I remember there was always a boat and there was always a friend with the boat, and we were able to go out and have a lot of fun during the summertime.
So I know you went to Salisbury University,
Yeah.
and thank you for sharing about that. And oftentimes we see students come to Salisbury University and grow as professionals, and unfortunately sometimes they leave the community and take their talents elsewhere. So what encouraged you to find your home in Wicomico County?
I got to tell you, it was my mentors at Salisbury University. So I came to the university and I went into business, studied business and marketing, and I had plans to move on to a big city and do that kind of work. And number one, I met my husband and he convinced me to stay. But professionally, I was settled in doing that because I had such great mentors here that just opened my eyes to opportunities that were available here, and also opened my eyes to the community and work I could do in the community to help shore up things that needed attention. So I'm just very thankful for that experience, and will always be grateful to Salisbury University for that.
All right. So you definitely have broken many barriers, gender barriers, in your line of work, and that's what I'm so pleased that you're with us today. And you're willing to talk about gender barriers,
Yeah.
and how you got to where you are, and hopefully encourage other women to go ahead and move into the path in which you've taken. I already know that you're a mentor for many other people, and we do appreciate you, and we appreciate you living in Wicomico County and contributing so much to what we have here. I'm just looking at statistically in your line of work. We see 3 areas where there's a lack of progress for women. Women occupy only 36.7% of the commercial real estate industry, and it has not changed much over the past 15 years. What are your thoughts? Why is there such a small number, and it hasn't grown much in 15 years?
I can speak only from my perspective. It's challenging. It's very, very challenging. And there has to be a willingness on behalf of anyone, male or female, getting into that industry to stay the path. You have to be sticky. You have to find your grit. You have to find your motivation, and you have to find camaraderie. And a lot of times, for me, I look around and I don't see any other women that I can buddy up with to figure things out. And I have been very, very fortunate to be able to have male mentors support me and help me and help me grow. And that has worked well for me. But I think that it can be a little intimidating. It has been for years for me to be able to get into the field and find success. Mm-hmm. Commercial real estate brokerage is something that you have to work on for years before it starts producing for you, making it worth your time and investment. And so getting through those initial humps is something that both male and females struggle with. And so that would be my answer to that. That's been my personal experience. And but again, I've had great mentors in the industry, in all the industries that I work in, economic development, commercial real estate development, and brokerage. And it's been a lot of fun so far. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is the next one's not a shocker to many professional women. Women in your line of work continue to earn less than men.
Yeah.
In 2020, the fixed salary gap between genders is 10.2%, and the commission and bonus gap is a staggering 56%.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that, on trying to make that gap a little bit smaller? I mean, what can we do to remedy that?
I think we can take, as women, more ownership in making that better. And we've made a lot of progression in that over the past few years specifically. I think there comes a point where if you're tuned into this and you're thinking about it and you're focusing on it, that you begin to stand up and say, this is not okay. This is not something that, I want to see or experience anymore. And you take ownership and you start to work to correct that. And whether that's on a large scale, in the community with legislation or different groups you can become active in, or on a personal level where you say, no more. I'm going to go out and I'm going to make money on my own and figure this thing out on my own. And I'll find out my value, my true value as far as my career and my worth. I think that is what we as a collective need to do. We need to figure that out.
And you clearly are a leader. But women continue to be less likely to reach top positions with their companies than men. Yeah. And women still hold only 9% of the executive positions in commercial real estate. 9%. Yeah. That's staggering out of all the statistics. Yeah. And so how was your journey in getting to become the leader? What sets you apart that you are where you are today?
Gosh, I've been in the workforce for 20 plus years, and I can tell you specific to my journey that I was always looking for, things that would challenge me and keep me engaged in the work I was doing. If I became bored doing something, it was not long before I was finding something else that really sparked my interest or kept me motivated. But always looking for the opportunity, moving to that opportunity, and eventually deciding that you got to make your own opportunities sometimes. You got to create them. You got to find them. And then you got to let people know about what you're doing, because you can do a lot of different things. But if people aren't aware of that and they don't understand the value that you bring to the situation, the project, the community, the property, then then they don't know. And so, as far as keeping people engaged in what you're doing and what you can offer, as far as setting yourself apart, I think it's always important to keep your eyes open for different opportunities on ways to become engaged, but also, not just career and work-wise, but look for the opportunities to become engaged in your community where your skills can be put to work to help lift your community up. That is something that should be done authentically and should be done passionately, because it inspires you and you truly want to help. But I think that's also a differentiator, because a lot of folks, don't have time or don't attribute time to do that. So.
And so it's almost like having a sense of fearlessness. If you know it's right, and it's something that you can do well, it's putting everything else aside, everything that can drag us down, being concerned or what's someone going to think, or, the direction that you're going, and just be fearless. And just go after it, because you're going to make a contribution. And then being able to serve the community also, I'm sure you get a sense of support from the community itself, rather than just from professional to professional finding support. When you do something good for the community comes back and rewards you tenfold in that level of support. So thank you. All right, so I think we're ready for the 10 magical questions.
Okay.
And so we'll try to get 10 in, but I almost do it like rapid fire. It's like one right after another. All right. So, Mary, who has been the most inspiring woman in your life, and why?
So, we were kind of talking before this interview. That's a little bit of a tough question for me. I have a few, and, I'll just start here. So, of course, my mom is number one, and I feel like everybody will say that. But truly, growing up, she was a single mom. And I just remember, getting up, going to school, and watching her go to work every day, day in, day out, tired, she's just a very, very, very hardworking, consistent woman. And she really spoke to me in ways without words about what it means to be a dedicated professional and someone who cares and loves their community. So she's number one and always will be. My great-grandmother, her grandmother, came here to the U.S. from Germany back around World War II. My family fled the country under Hitler's regime, and they didn't agree. They didn't choose to stay. And so they came here with two small children and learned the language and worked as my great-grandmother worked as a maid in a very wealthy person's estate. And, you know, she did what she had to do. And I just often, when I have tough times, think of the courage that took. And then the third one on a larger scale, I have to say Oprah Winfrey. Because I can listen to her words now as an older, wiser woman who has found her voice and has found her authenticity and has stayed connected to her truth. And it sets a huge example to me. You know, you can imagine over 20 years, and you know this as a professional, you see and you hear a lot, and you're exposed to a lot, and you have to stay true to yourself and what you know is right. And if you ever veer off that path, you're going to know it. You're going to feel it. And, you know, when I listen to her words of wisdom, it helps bring me back to that. So I would say her.
And she definitely sets you on a clear path.
Oh, yeah.
And something that's achievable.
Yes.
So what have been your barriers, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah. So the biggest barrier for me, and I couldn't even say this you know, maybe 5 years ago, was capital to get started in my own business. You know, I grew up, there wasn't a lot of money. I didn't know how I was going to go to college, but somehow I got through. I worked very, very hard. You know, commercial real estate brokerage, of course, we talked briefly, you don't just walk into that and start having a paycheck. You have to put the years in and figure out if this is something you can do. And I also have my own consultancy where I work with economic developers and community developers and then private developers. And, you know, being able to figure out how all that comes together and how you're going to basically survive in business on your own. I've had a barrier with that over the years, but the grit and the stickiness has proven well worth it, and here I am doing it. So capital was a barrier, and we can check that box, you know, I stuck with it. The other barriers are finding camaraderie. So we as people need other people. You know, finding the camaraderie when you look around and you're having a situation in your business or in a project you're working on, and, you know, having someone understand where you can talk through and work through things when they don't have a personal interest when they don't have a personal financial interest is rare. And so, you know, as a woman, it has been a challenge to find that, because there's not a lot of other women when I look around in my field. But they are there, and the ones that I've met, you know, we have built those systems and those relationships, and it's there if you find it, if you look for it.
So what kind of resources did you draw upon to try to overcome the barriers, particularly the capital barrier? That had been quite challenging.
Wow, yeah, that's my single most challenging because it's been a journey. So I worked really hard for a long time, and then I saved money for a long time, and then I began to invest some of that money back into my own thoughts and desires on where I wanted to take my business and my work. And it has proven worth the investment. So, just working really hard and establishing networks and proving your work with other people. Somebody wants to work with you, you show them your product or your efforts, and they say, yeah, that's good. Let's do some more of that over here. So that slowly those barriers start to come off. And so I would say, hard work, a number of years of hard work,
and just not
paid
giving
off
up.
there. Yeah, not giving up.
So why do you feel we may need more women in your line of work?
Yeah. Well, women they have emotional intelligence that I think is very useful in my industry, in the industries I work in. I think that when you are working on developing or selling or, community projects, I think that it's necessary to have a balanced perspective from male and female on how to do that, what the best ways are, how to engage a diverse group of people in that, because we all know two heads are smarter than one, and then it goes beyond that. But I think that having more women, specifically in brokerage, would be incredibly beneficial for brokerages that are set up as different companies, as far as increasing their numbers, meeting their quotas, developers, as far as, you have a lot of women business owners who need space. And, you need someone who can speak their language and understand that and the challenges and barriers women face. So it's all about being able to identify and communicate and understand.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Now, we've already established that you're fearless. If you know it's right for you and it's right for your community and for the person you're doing business with, that you are fearless. Yeah. But inherently, a lot of women have been raised to not make waves. And just hearing that, you shouldn't be making waves, you're just like, but we live near the ocean. Yeah. Isn't there waves out there already?
Swim. Yeah.
I'm just riding them, that's all I'm doing. But it's hard to face that fear of making waves. But also, you have to remain authentic to yourself. So how do you make that wave and remain authentic to who Mary Mears is?
Something I've learned over the past 4 years specifically is that you can be living someone else's story, professionally or personally, but someone can come up with this whole story about who you are and what your role should be and what you should even be doing on a daily basis. And that story completely fulfills another person's vision for what they're trying to do. And you need to think about that. Is that what you're doing every day? Do you want to get up and go to work and exhaust yourself for somebody else?
Not be true to yourself.
And not be true to yourself and your feelings and your thoughts of how things should be, or what the right things to do are. So for me, it's kind of like, okay, self, I don't agree with this, or I don't want to spend hours of my life trying to fulfill someone else's story. What about my story? Yeah. And so that's been incredibly helpful for me.
And I think, by being a woman, I can tell if someone's being authentic to themselves.
Yes.
And if they are being authentic and transparent, they naturally become leaders and mentors for other people in the same line of work. And I think that's what's led you to be so successful in your career. If you look back, let's say, let's jet it back 25, 30 years. What are your thoughts about women who were in your line of work 20, 30 years ago?
I don't know that I can see any 20, 30 years ago. When I began in economic development, there were none that were directors of the offices of economic development across Maryland that I can recall. Maybe there was, but not locally. Now that has changed. The tide has turned there. There are, directors of economic development in Talbot County, Caroline County, Worcester County, you name it, that are female. And I was a former director of economic development in Worcester, but I felt like I was one of the first, and dealt with the challenges associated with that back then. But in brokerage, even when I began, several years ago there were a lot of women that were involved, but maybe they were assistants to a broker, worked on the team, worked on the deals, but they were the assistant, they weren't the face. And I've seen that turning, and I'm excited about that.
That's good.
Yeah.
So we can squeeze in maybe one or two more questions.
Yeah.
This should be an hour-long show with Meredith Mears, but we're
talk.
down to the 30 minutes because there's just so much she can contribute to our discussion. There's no doubt. So I'm going to have to ask the geeky question, and that is, if you could have an ideal superpower, what would it be and why?
I love this question because when I was little, I used to want to fly. Like, not in a plane. I used to want to fly. I used to have dreams about flying.
That would come handy in your line of work.
Oh, man.
It was a vision.
Well, yeah. So, what I've done to accommodate that is I love to travel and I love to fly. And I love it because when I'm up in an airplane, I can look down and have a different perspective. And then it's almost like an education of sorts, being in different terrains or, just seeing things from a different perspective. It kind of keeps it all in perspective. And that has transferred on to my son, who loves to fly airplanes. And so, I don't know what his future is going to be, but I can tell he likes it too.
Well, you've broken a lot of barriers, and clearly you went to school and have chosen a profession where it didn't matter to you if there were any gender differences whatsoever.
Yeah.
Would you, if there were no gender differences in other areas of education and careers, would you have done anything differently than what you're doing now?
I don't think so, because I love my work, and I love where I am in my work. I am independent in my work finally after many, many, many years, and I love every minute of every part of it.
Well, Mary, I want to thank you again for being on today's show and sharing all of your experiences and also what you contribute to Wicomico County. And we're so grateful that you've chosen Wicomico as your home and you remain in Wicomico County as your home. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
I also want to thank our viewers and for joining us today. And if you like programs like this, please make sure that you support PAC 14, because it's by the donors is what makes this happen. And so we're so appreciative of PAC 14 and the donors and sponsors that are out there. So with that said, thank you. We'll see you again.